Hello, my name is Yarrow, and I want to tell you a story. So, this is another one of my Wiccan fairy tales. This one was specifically written for Ostara or Midspring, and this was actually, I think, one of the first, if not the first ones I wrote. And it's one of my favorites also because I just love how fun it is. Um, yeah, this is Hare's Eggs, a Midspring story by Yarrow Pennyroyal. Long ago, in an old dark wood, lived a witch. She lived in a small hut with a garden, an old dog, and a flock of chickens. The people in the little village went to her for their aches and pains, fields and gardens, and lack or surplus of children. She sang and danced on nights of the full moon. One year, after many years in the woods, spring was late to the forest. Imbolc, the beginning of spring, had been icy and dreary. Winds blew cold, and snow fell instead of rain. Though the days got longer, the sun did not feel warm, and the ground remained frozen and hard. The village began to wonder if the spring goddess had overslept. They painted flowers on stones around wells and on their windows. They hung braids of colored yarn from branches and fence posts, and left offerings of dried fruits and fresh meats to entice her back to the fields. But alas, the days were still cold, and no sacred hares played upon the icy hills. After many days, the villagers came to the old witch and asked what was to be done. There will be no fields of grain or corn, they cried, no singing birds, no roasted fowl or rabbit soup if spring never comes to the forest. The witch agreed. The forest was lonely, with so many animals still sleeping. There would be no new chicks if hens never brooded, and her feet were still cold. We must have a spring festival, she said. There can be no spring without a festival. Prepare a feast and gifts for the goddess, and I will summon her to feast with us at dawn. The villagers returned to the village and did as they were told. After all, even if winter lingered, it would still be a wonderful time. They prepared a great feast and spring games. The children made paper flowers and drew colorful shapes and creatures on drab chicken eggs to remind the goddess of spring. They brought their gifts to the witch, who took them to her altar in the trees. At dawn on the equinox, the witch drew a circle around her altar and called to the goddess of spring. Eostra came to the altar as the sun crept over the hills and seeped into the trees. This light shone from her hair and her eyes, and she wore a long cloak of moss that grew beautiful flowers, vines, and mushrooms. She was the beautiful spring dawn, the dark, fertile earth, and the buds of new leaves. The great goddess sat before the altar with her cloak all around her, but she looked sad. Lady of Spring, why do you look so sad? The lady sighed, and her voice was like a babbling brook and the singing of birds. I come to this forest to watch my hares and rabbits climb from their burrows and play on the hills. I have waited for them, but there are no rabbits and hares. It was true. The witch had seen no rabbits sneaking into her cold garden, and no hares bouncing and boxing on the hills. Hares were sacred to the goddess of spring, and the villagers had missed them as well. The witch did not have any real hares to give to the goddess, but she did have other gifts from the villagers. She presented the gifts to her, a bouquet of folded flowers and colorful birds and animals drawn on warm chicken eggs. The lady, delighted with her gifts and the love of the villagers, began to laugh. Her laugh was musical and beautiful, and as she laughed, the beautiful eggs wriggled and bounced and soon broke open. Out of the colorful shells sprang no little chickens, but rabbits and hares. They bounced out of the basket and took off running for the open hills and meadows. The sight was so funny that the goddess and the witch laughed even harder, and soon all the chicken eggs in the whole village burst open, and all manners of hares and rabbits raced for the hills, leaving behind delighted villagers and very confused chickens. The goddess was so happy with the creatures that her warm smile and laughter began to melt the snow and warm the ground. Spring, at last, had come to the little village just outside of the forest, and the Lady of Spring joined them in their feast and festival, and there were many rabbits and hares forevermore in the hills and forests. But every once in a while, especially on a spring equinox, some of the hares still laid an egg or two. And that is Hare's Egg, the story for Ostara. Like I said, this is one of my very favorites, and I like to read it, and I think that it's especially fun for children. I think I read it to my nieces, and they seem to really like it. So that was that was everything. Thank you for listening, and I hope that you really enjoyed the story.